This is our fourth one. This one is on sustaining and growing value-added opportunities in the northern commercial fishing industry. And once again, not to sound like a broken record, for those that have joined us the last 4 days, just some housekeeping items. One is if you're not talking, please put mute on your mic. That will help to cut back on the background noise that we hear at times. Also, Chris and I will be, because Leanne is not in today, Chris and I or Kim will be monitoring the chat box in case there's any issues arising. I think Ryan and Dave also monitor the box as well. And lastly, presentations are that are being put forward over the last few days. We're going to be having most of them on our website next week, towards the latter end of next week, along with the videos and any draft strategic plans that we've been going over. So in saying that, I am going to invite Chris, our CFO, to introduce a video this morning. It's a full-length video on the commercial fishing industry. So Chris.
Thanks, Ozzy. So just like our other industry videos, we set out to make a video that would raise the profile of the commercial fishing industry in Manitoba. But I think more importantly is to tell the fisher's story, get a unique perspective. So I would like to thank Dale Jonason and his crew out of Woboden, and Andre Brandt, who put a ton of effort into this. They went out on the Sipawis Lake mid to end September of this year. And yeah, we can take a look at what it was, but I've never seen a video before this that really captured a northern Manitoba fisher's perspective quite like this. So hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
And just one quick reminder, if everyone can turn their videos off, I think you'll be able to see the video much better as well. Thank you.
We couldn't even see across the lake from the upside to the other side. It was snowing.
No, we didn't get any snow today, Mario.
No snow.
About 10 tons, 15 tons. Then when we move over there, after we're done setting over there, when we do that next load, we'll go straight to over there with our ice.
Top of the morning.
morning. Getting the uniform on.
There are the seagulls here that just knocked out the cut for the seagulls to eat. Breakfast.
All good, Mario? Okay. Nice day for lifting nets today. Beautiful, sun's out, little light wind. That's the end marker. That one has my number on it. All these, we have a buoy like this at the beginning. It's got to have my number on it, same as the end. So if the resources come, it's too rough to go over there, they'll come to this one, they'll check this number. I gotta have this number on my nets. Put them on the float line. It keeps the net kind of a little bit off the bottom. We don't want to get into too many mullets. We're after pickerel, but we use those to try and keep the net nice and spread out through the top of the water. I want to stay out of the mariahs and stuff that freshwater don't really. They don't take mariah burbits. So that's where they seem to be hanging around, is on the bottom. So try and stay away from taking the fish that we don't have to take. Got these rocks on the end here, on the end of the net. It just helps from if you're lifting your net. Sometimes the wind gets bad, and if your net, it might ball up your net, and then it's just like a big line of rope. So we use those rocks to kind of separate it so that wind can't flip the nets. A lot of there's sturgeon in this lake too, and if you get in an area where there's a big sturgeon, you'll just swim right through your net. They usually stick along the bottom, so save our net value too. A lot of times we'll get trees coming down, driftwood stuff getting in the bottom of the net and get snagged on the bottom. A little bit of damage there. Have to fix that up in the off season. These nets run around about 200 to 250 bucks a net. So you try to take care of them the best you can. They're not exactly cheap. So this guy right here, see, he's still alive. He just caught by his mouth here. Freshwater don't take anything that small, so we'll put him back in the water. Hopefully he makes it, and I'll see you in about 5 years. Just the last few years I started my own outfit. Like my own license, my own boat. Started in 18. My second year running my own outfit. Fished for my help out with Dennis Johnson for about 18 years.
figured we'd divide and conquer. So I got another outfit, 4 boats and fish. Didn't do very good off the start. Struggled a little bit. Also, Dennis helped me out. Let me go fishing in the honey hole. Pulled my hide out of the fire. My Abby's dad fished. Alexander Senior. Alexander Junior was my hobby. Grew up in the street. I used to go to Kushan camp for about a week, 2 weeks at a time when I was just a boy, just to go hang out at camp, get out of town. The biggest part was raising enough money to get it off the ground. CDF just don't give away money to people, anybody. I had to come up with some startup costs. Of course, I wanted to borrow lots to buy a boat next. I wanted to start right from scratch. So I had to come up with 10% of the money I wanted to borrow. Lots of help from family to get me going. And then it was to try and work my tail off and scratch my way out of the hole. I was able to pull myself out of the hole far enough to get another boat. So now we got 2 boats fishing, a little bit more production, fish a bigger area. At least now if one boat breaks down, I still have another boat. I was kind of took a big gamble, with one boat. I knew I had a brand new motor. I'm pretty good mechanically, so everything stayed going. Gotta have a good crew though. Gotta have good guys. It's not for everybody, but there's some lions out there still. I want to stay in the bush, live like the bush life, camp. It's not for everybody, like I said, but they're out there. Just gotta find them. It's always nice to have a good crew. You have a good crew. You have a nice camaraderie with the boys. Lots of laughs. Like I said, when we're out here, this is what we gotta concentrate on, is catching these bad boys right here. And that's all that's on our minds. Catch fish. Stay safe. We get a new quota every year. This is what goes on the quota. This is what we're after. That's the money fish. My favorite part is probably just being out here. No one bothering you. No one, the freedom. You're out here, peaceful. No sirens. Nobody texting me, come do this. Miss the kids though, miss the family for sure. It's always nice when I go home for the night, and then I'm back out the next day. Usually out for about 2-3 days. Then I gotta haul the fish back to town, bring more supplies, gas, more ice, grub. Haul some water. It's just the freedom of being out here. It's peaceful. You work hard, but it pays off. Stay healthy, eat healthy. There's always, like I said, when we started off, it was one boat. Now there's 2 boats. And now I find myself worrying about that other crew because I'm not there with them. Always just that everything's okay on their end. We'll hopefully see them in a couple hours back at camp with a full boat. Well, now with the 2 boats, would average about 6 tubs of dressed pickerel a day, each boat. Maybe about 3 or 4 tubs of dressed mullets, and maybe a tub and a half of dressed jackfish, and maybe half a tub of tulipies per boat, which is not too bad for Simplest Lake. Well, we just put, I think it's about, I'd say about 15 miles from camp to where we are now. So we've come this far, then we got to go around on the west shore a little ways. So I'd say about, that's 15, I'd say 20, it's 35. And then we gotta come all the way back to the landing tonight with a load of fish, so that's another 15 miles, so 35, 45, 50 miles a day today. And then that other boat will do about, I'd say about 30 miles today. So we're putting on about 80 miles a day and just traveling in the boats. This fish was right here, mangled up in this net here. I believe these jackfish were after this guy. A lot of times these jacks will have these tulipies. I think their real name is Cisco, their fish name. But there are a lot of predators will go after these guys. They're a low price fish. We take them. Every little bit counts. Right now the eggs, the roe inside the tulipi are a pretty good price. Too bad we only get maybe a handful of them a day. These big pickerel here, this one would have been graded a jumbo walleye. There's no more jumbos now, so anything over a large is considered just a large. So he's got a good price on him too, because he's put a little bit extra weight on the large side. Get it off his face there. Hook him so I could get a better position with my hand. I like to hold him right here by the gill. It's a little bit better grip. And you just get everything over all the fins. Now we're fishing. Pickle. After. Holy moly. Keep them coming. You're gonna make me dig yet. This way. There they are. We found them. They were trying to hide, but we found them. They could swim, but they can't hide. They like to floss. In the boat we had ice on the fish in the beginning, bottom layers, and then when we catch it we ice it at the top when we're all done, keep it fresh for when we get here. And then when we dress it, see this one's still twitching. But fresh, yeah. The whole point you gotta make nice cuts. If you slash inside here somewhere, damage, they might not accept it at the plant. So when you make your cuts, they gotta be nice cuts. We always put ice on the bottom of the tubs to start off a nice layer of cooling right off the bat. And then we just I try to concentrate on one species so we don't mix up the tubs in the boat with just every species in a boat. So when you're doing one tub, you have one setup. You're not throwing a fish there, it just takes up too much. My partner over there is doing the mullets, so he's concentrating on strictly mullets, and I'm working on the pickerel. So they say you gotta love what you do. I'm loving what I'm doing right now. Get him! Shoot him! Shoot him! Shoot him!
Hey, well, I'd like to once again thank Mr. Johnson and his crew, and of course Andre, for that video. I found that when I saw that for the first time just yesterday, actually, it really gave me a good feel of what our commercial fishers deal with and how they go about doing their job. Uh, Now, what I'd like to do is take time to introduce John Osler from InterGroup Consultants. Oh, and before I forget, some people were asking, we will have that video as well on our website next week, along with our other videos we showed you on Monday. So John is an economist with over 25 years of experience in the resource development and management. John has experience coordinating environmental assessment processes, including socioeconomic assessments and public participating programs, and undertaking financial and economic analysis for public and private sector ventures in Western and Northern Canada. He has been the principal on recent socioeconomic impact assessments for projects in Northern Saskatchewan. Mr. Osler has a master's degree in business administration from the University of Sheffield. John is a member of the International Association of Impact Assessment, as well as the International Association for Public Participation. John is particularly interested in Canada's inland freshwater commercial fishery, where he has had the opportunity to contribute to the understanding of this important natural resource. John and Christina, who's also from InterGroup, has been working with CDF for a number of months now to help put together our strategic plan in the commercial inland industry. So, John, the floor is yours, and welcome.
I sound particularly boring when Oswald reads that out, but thank you for the introduction. So today we're going to be talking about Northern Commercial Fishing Industry in Northern Manitoba, and I believe I've got a presentation that will take about, well, I'm no more than 40 minutes, but I probably more closer to 20, that will summarize the work that we've been doing to date, share some results. And I think what really it's going to do is help set the stage for a subsequent discussion that's going to follow that will focus on 3 core priority areas that we want to speak to. So I can share my screen that will start the presentation. Can someone give me some thumbs up to show me that you can actually see it? Awesome. Before we start, InterGroup's a firm out of Winnipeg. We work in Northern and Western Canada. A lot of the work that we do, it really relies on the inputs of others and other stakeholders. And as part of that, I want to acknowledge, and the firm wants to acknowledge, that we do a lot of our work in Manitoba on the original lands of the Anishinaabeg, the Cree, the Oji Cree, the Dakota, and the Dene peoples. And it is also recognizing the homeland of the Métis Nation. And as part of what we do, we respect that those treaties were made with these territories, and there were harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous communities and in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. It is very important for us as a firm that we hold those beliefs. Now, today I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about, this is the overview of the presentation. We started this process off with a series of objectives. We followed obviously a process, and we came up with a strategy plan. The strategy plan that I described to you today lays out the priority areas and gives you some insights in terms of the initial results that we've heard to date. This thing is automatically advancing, but in terms of next steps, then we'll talk about what we need to focus on as we move forward today and in tomorrow. So as a beginning, the birthplace of this project was really, it's been a long-standing issue and challenge and resource to the north. But in 2018, when Look North looked at the Manitoba's Northern Economic Development Initiative, they did identify a handful of objectives that we have generally adhered to as we started through this process. So the 4 objectives that I've listed here are things that I want people to try to remember as I talk through the next couple of minutes. 1, to be focused on increasing, where possible, the sustainable volume of harvested fish. Are there opportunities within the north to develop other sources of volume? And then the second one being, are there opportunities in the north to look at expanding the number of species that are harvested? Obviously, as we heard in the video today, there's lots of different species of fish that can be harvested. The question obviously is, are they marketable? Do they generate a price that makes it worthwhile to collect it? And that's part of that relationship that fishermen have with their markets. The other one, the third objective that was presented was, are there opportunities to increase winter commercial operations? Can we change the nature in which we fish to make it more accessible, and can we encourage more people to be looking at the economic opportunity of winter commercial operations? And finally, are there areas where we can develop, and the wording here is explicit, but identify and develop sustainable value-added opportunity? Can we find ways of, not just selling the whole fish, but doing something to the fish or efficiencies in the process that gets it to market that is of regional benefit to fishers and to communities? Finding ways to add value to processes or the catch itself it is important, but making sure that it is ultimately attributable to fishermen is of utmost importance. So in terms of the overall process that we followed to get this done, it consisted of sort of roughly 4 major leaps. The first one being, what is the current environment? What's the current situation with commercial fishing in northern Manitoba? And that is based on the work that has been done to date on this subject, and there has been an awful lot of work done on it, not only within northern Manitoba, but within western northern Canada as well. The second step of that is, what is the degree of active engagement that we need to have and have had with fishermen and also industry stakeholders? We're relatively bright people, but we don't have by any means all the answers. And the people that actually do this are the ones that have perhaps the best perspectives. And that was part of it, embedded within the process that we followed. So Look North and CDF staff, you will have participated in direct interactions with communities, with stakeholders, with fishers to gain that better understanding. With that, we know where we want to be or could be and where we are today, and that generates a set of gaps, things that we need to be doing or should be doing or could be doing to help us move us towards that date. And so the gap analysis was intrinsic in terms of helping us identify where we wanted to be strategically, and that's the outcome of this result. So we have a strategic action plan that will help guide this process as it moves forward. Current environment. So when we looked at the current environment, there are a couple of key perspectives here. Many of these things I think most of the people on this call right now are well aware of, but it's helpful because it helps to lay out what we need to be considering as we're coming up with the plan. One, probably from an economist's perspective, that this is a marketplace where prices are defined by markets and not fishers. Fishers do not have the capacity to be able to say, this is what I can demand or command for a price for fish. It is based on what the market is calling on it. The other one being that the demographics of the fisher population, the people actively involved, is getting older. I'm going to suggest that I'm just reminding that someone has an open mic, and if they can turn it off, it might help with my audio. With the demographics and the average age of fishers getting older, that becomes a challenge in terms of how do we go about recruiting youth, because that is the future of the industry, and what steps do we need to be doing to help encourage or make it attractive. What we've heard largely is it has to be an effective career. It has to be something that can that someone can look at and say, with that effort, I can actually make a career at that. And what flies in the face of making it an active career is, well, we're talking about how pricing is determined by the marketplace and may not have changed, and that the population is getting older. The input costs are increasing. They continue to increase. The cost of running a boat, the cost of whether you're having to run a second boat like we saw in the video to offset some risks, the fact that the processes to get it to market have also increased in terms of costs. So those are other things to be considered. The other ones, open market experience, is really a reference to saying at the same time all these realities are there, there is also a change in how the market operates. Manitoba in particular, as of December 2017, and its relationship with Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation has signaled that change. So fishers are no longer selling to one particular buyer. They now have the opportunity to sell to multiple buyers, and multiple buyers have the opportunity to buy into that. How we operate within that is still being defined, and it will be defined, I suspect, for a number of years as fishers get more and more experience with it. There were concerns about the fish stock sustainability. You know, it makes one thing to plan for a future world with support for northern fishers, but we have to ensure that there are fish there to be able to be harvested, and the right fish. And that's one of the challenges that we have at the same time. There's interest in training opportunities to support all this. And the final point, in terms of the current environment, there is a constant need for infrastructure. And when I talk about infrastructure here, it's not just talking about docks and boats and boat motors and nets. It is about making sure that there are effective processes in place, that getting product to market, processing product and getting it to the retail customer or the buyer are also essentially infrastructure. And making sure that all those things all work is really important to making sure that it's successful. So when this presentation is going to be made available to everybody, so I am not going to go bullet for bullet through this, but I wanted to consolidate what we'd heard from the engagement process into 4 core bullets, just to be helpful to help provide a framework. The first one being that people are interested in new opportunities. There was a willingness when we spoke with fishers and industry partners that there's a desire for training opportunities, recognizing that there's always an opportunity to learn and to be able to do something better. They're open to what can be explored with winter fishing. And there was an awful lot of interest in what other value-added processing could be done to add to the value of the fish itself. Not a COVID cough, sorry. Extending ownership of licenses by fishers in terms of industry challenges. People acknowledged that and confirmed that some of the analysis that we had done in looking at documents held true, that the benefits of government subsidies were there and acknowledged, that the climate was changing, and that was affecting how people could harvest and the fish that was harvested. And that was something to be aware of. The final one that did surface that wasn't anticipated when we started this process about a year ago was COVID-19 and the immediate need for fisher relief programs. In terms of business management, how do we adjust and manage risks for fishers going forward, and what types of activities could be looked at that would help fishers operate better in the marketplace. And then finally, the next generation. The challenges with attracting youth. or that next generation of fisher, because you're trying to build a sustainable industry. You can have helpers who assist with boats as being one pathway, but there are a bunch of other things too. How do you plan out an effective career? How do you make sure that it's interesting, and how can you lay it out so that the cost of entry isn't excessive, and the risks that people are assuming aren't excessive, so that people can see an opportunity within it. So based on what we had looked at and what we'd heard from people and interactions with them, we developed a strategic action plan. So how do you best implement this? And the only reason I threw this up for everybody is because as we went to develop it, you got to be aware of a couple of core things that were influencing us and CEDF as we developed it. First and foremost, there's a bunch of other stuff going on, provincially, federally, on the periphery and directly related to development of the inland commercial fishery, or sustaining or supporting it. And you have to know that that's aware. This is one part of that puzzle, but what we wanted to make sure is that we were aware of as best as possible and in line with other provincial and federal initiatives that supported the fisheries. You don't want to be overlapping or wasting resources, doubling down on things that don't need to be doubled down on, okay? Then benefits. Looking at making sure that we're securing benefits in the near term, because it has to be successful, but also that we're aware of and they're consistent with where it's going to end up in the future, so that you can support the benefits going forward. You also, as I've talked about earlier, we're doing this, it sounds pretty obvious, but we're doing this to maximize the benefit to fishers, not the industry, not the retailer, not the retail customer. We're trying to do this selfishly to add benefit to the harvester, the individual that has to go out and wants to go out to collect these things. Success is obviously another, what looks like an obvious objective or framework that we're looking at, but it's twofold. One is that this has to be successful, or that's the intention. And to make it successful, you want to ensure that you have incremental challenges that are overcome and addressed, and also that you're aware of what the risks are getting into some of these initiatives, and that you're able to manage them going forward. So I want people to be just sitting in the back of their heads as they're looking at it. How risky is this initiative? What's the likelihood of success of that initiative? And finally, there are uncertainties. There's a lot of uncertainties with what we're trying to accomplish here and what is going on within the industry. Not only that the marketplace is changing and the way that marketplace is changing, but also in the last, whatever it is, 8 months, although it seems to be a lot shorter than that, the COVID challenges that we've had. That's really demanding that we be adaptive. And the ability to pivot and be flexible is really critical as we move forward here. Okay, so the other thing with strategy is an allowing there's some near-term, medium-term, and long-term type of perspectives. This is how it was structured. Okay, so we broke it into 3 phases, and the phases were stuff that took place in the spring of 2020, driven immediately by the need to do things that would help to stabilize the industry, at least. Phase 2, stuff that took place or taking place in fall of 2020, that helped to encourage and support the development of local and regional markets. And one of the overriding themes with the action plan was the development of local markets. And you can see that theme as you go through everything. Phase 3 is more longer term. The activities that will take place in 2021 and honestly beyond 2021 to help expand the capacity to reach provincial and national markets from the strength of success in phases 1 and 2, okay? So as we look at phase one, stabilizing the local industry, this is stuff that was focused in spring of 2020. CDF financial supports, what things could be done in the immediate to help support and mitigate the downside risks of COVID-19, and that's really what was influencing us. The other one was looking at a pilot local market. How could we introduce the concept of a harvester market within the program to help kickstart the development of a local industry or a local marketplace? And that was initially identified to occur as part of this project's planning in February and March. Of course, that had to be delayed because of COVID. And now we have recently seen in phase two extensions to that now. We look to actively engage immediately with industry partners. And I put FFMC, Freshwater Fish Marketing Corporation, as a reference there, because they're similarly dealing with an awful lot of their issues at the same time. Many of you are likely aware that their cash fish, as the video referred to, pickerel is one of the cash fish. The market for that dried up very quickly on the onset of COVID as retail organizations stopped buying it. And so FFMC stopped buying it from fishermen. The last point was technology options. What things could we be looking at or starting to understand now that would help define supports going forward? So that was phase one. Phase two looked at expanding on the local harvester market and taking the lessons that were learned from the first initiative and applying it in a subsequent initiative, and that's what took place in Thompson, Flin Flon, and Opaskwayak. And then start looking at low investment value added opportunities, so things that don't cost a lot of money that could have a big impact and weren't that particularly risky. And then start looking at expanding apprenticeship programs. So one of the key things that came out of that was the local harvester markets. And that was an initiative that CDF pursued with Look North in Thompson, Flin Flon, and OCN. And I just wanted to flag in terms of early initial results. And as we look at what those harvest markets did in terms of sales, preliminary, they were designed to look at marketing forest products and fish products. And those are the samples of the receipts, total receipts from those particular events. And I would deem that successful. This was done as a preliminary. It was done to help define and inform planning. And in fact, there were exit surveys done of participants at those events to help identify opportunities to make them better going forward. And where there's a lot to be learned from what it takes to do that, and it should help, and it will help inform the further development of the local regional marketplace. So those are all critical things, and this has been quite helpful. Phase 3 of the process looks at provincial national markets, and as you can see, that they're longer reaching. Collaborative stock management programs like we have with environment stewards and working collectively between fishers and the parties that are responsible for the management of those resources is a first step to helping with things like operating a Northern Commercial Fishery Working Group, which again is recognizing that this isn't a top-down approach and this isn't a bottom-up approach. This will take collaboration between harvesters, processors, and marketers to ensure that there's a system that works. Eco-certification of lakes has been an initiative of the province, and it continues to be an area of focus that we see we want to be lending support to and participating in. Unfortunately, the expense of doing that is substantial, and it will need external partners to be successful, including the province. Regional and provincial branding, recognizing the support of the value of the local marketplace and associating what we got as a great product from the region and very committed participants is really important. Our conclusions were that if people saw the value, like we see in that video, that there is huge value to this product, and we need to be able to tell that story and have people associated with it. It's one of the big pushes in terms of marketing generally, that if people can associate it with local or the harvester particularly, whether it's the farmer or the rancher or the fisher, those have value in some of the marketplaces that we're selling into. So next steps. The branding campaign, the Buy Local branding campaign is one of the first and foremost. And here's a shameless plug for the sticker that we've been now distributing and making use of. And you'll see this all over the place, encouraging people to support local Manitoba commercial fishers. There is a promotional video that we just saw, and literally this morning was the first time I saw it as well. I think it's beautiful, and it helps to link what's on your plate with what's in the lake, and I think that's really valuable. We will continue to have web presence, a social media presence, and we're cautiously looking at how this process will adapt to the post-COVID-19 environment. And finally, that's it. We are gonna, this is the other shameless plug for buying local, but that's the end of the presentation. And we are now going to shift to discussion about how can we increase fisher incomes, how can we increase other value-added opportunities, and overall, how do we increase fisher employment in this area? How do we make careers out of this? So I'm done. Thank you. Any questions on that?
Thank you, John. Yeah, is there any questions of John before we hand it over to Ryan and the Envision Group?
Yes, it's Evelyn Dutka here. I was just wondering, when you talked about the ECHO certification and the provincial initiative that's currently in place, you talked about the requirement for support, and you did mention governments, provincial specifically. What do you see that? What type of support or what expansion to that area are you looking at?
Yeah, the good question. Eco-certification is being done because there's some downstream benefit that retailers may perceive or do perceive in terms of the value of that, knowing that it is certified or it's been officially environmentally sensitive, and you can put a label on that is valuable, right? So the question is, how much is it in terms of pennies or dollars per kilo? I'm trying to assess it that way. If you back it up in terms of what it takes to get that certification, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the price to A, secure the certification, and B, maintain the certification. And those costs can be tens of thousands easily of dollars. And if it's not, and is that borne by the harvester, or is that borne by the entity promoting it, or is it a public value? And so those are the types of questions that I'm not really, I don't represent the province or Canada in this discussion, but I know that if you came to a fisher on, let's say, Sipawisk and said, congratulations, we're going to certify your lake for you, and it will cost you tens of thousands of dollars a year to secure and maintain that certification, you and you alone, and it will provide you with hundreds of dollars of additional revenue, you're going to quickly come to this conclusion that a couple of $100 worth of additional revenue and tens of thousands of dollars of additional cost, it doesn't look like it's that attractive. So it needs external partners and frankly, the expertise to be able to do it.
Just to add on that a bit, when it comes to eco certification, there's also, it's not one of those things that are supported a lot by fishers. If you talk to a lot of fishers, there's a real issue as to what right does a organization from BC has to come to Manitoba to say whether we are having sustainable fishing practices. I think one of the things that was discussed was the potential of having a province of Manitoba sticker, like to have a brand that's actually developed by the province of Manitoba, supported by the province, which I think will be more heavily supported by our fishers. I think that's one way to go forward on this. It may cut back a lot on the cost that John is talking about, but I think it needs to be really discussed. When it comes to certification, it's not as much how much more income can I make if my lake is certified. It's more of a move to try and protect the potential loss of future markets. Because one thing we are knowing is that a lot of the large buyers are starting to move towards only wanting to buy eco-certified fish. So it's more like to try and, for our average fishers, trying to convince them to say, okay, we need to get certified, but by the way, it may not result in more income. It's more to protect a loss of markets down the road, right? So it is a challenging process, and that's why I'm saying that we may want to look at our own provincial brand, but I just want to add that. I believe I'm looking at 10:52. Just, I guess John, are you able to take for one last question? Do one last question from anyone? Everyone's good? Great. Well, we'll have lots of time to chat. I'm going to turn this over now to Ryan. He'll be going through our breakout room process. So, Ryan.
Thanks, Oswald, and good morning, everybody. We're happy to be part of this. I know from myself and David, who's also with us from the Envision team, we're learning a lot about Northern Manitoba, a lot about what's going on in the industries. This has been a rich morning full of great information already. Thank you, John, for setting the stage and talking about the strategic initiatives that are being focused on in commercial fishing in Northern Manitoba, and of course reference to the great story told through the video, some cool technologies. John, I'm also interested in that M audio, looks like a key station maybe leaning in the background, but that's another conversation for another time. So what we want to do now is talk about solutions and ideas. And that's why we're coming together, and that's why we're going into breakout rooms, right? And boy, this has just become part of our life over the last 8 months. We all know what breakout rooms are. So we're going to get into small groups, and we're going to focus those conversations, as John mentioned, on increasing employment in commercial fishing and increasing income. What are those benefits and successes like we just saw in the presentation? And increasing value add, and as John mentioned as well, where does that happen? Does that happen in processing? Does that happen in the catch? So we're going to break out into rooms where those are the specific focus areas. So we won't ask you to go all over the place. We just want to focus the conversation on one of those. And based on what room you end up in, the CEDF staff is going to help say, hey, we're talking about this right now. We're talking about increasing income. So you'll know what sort of the basis of your discussion is going to be about. You're going to know what you're talking about when you get in there, because the CEDF staff's going to help you. And the first thing that we're going to do specifically is those top of mind ideas. As soon as we hear a situation, as soon as we hear about something like increasing income, there may be those instantaneous, immediate things that come to mind. Oh, right away I think about this. So we want to explore that conversationally. So CEDF staff are going to help kind of get the idea out of you and get some details about it. But then we're also going to rely on everybody else in the room just to kind of build on it, right? You might have an idea, somebody else might think something about that you hadn't initially thought. They might say, oh, what if we added this? Or what if we thought about this or did this? So we want to take time to build on each other's ideas as well. So we really hope that everybody participates. You're the people with the knowledge to come up with great ideas to address these things.
Brian, if you can do us one favor, can you just do a quick reminder of breakout rooms 1, 2, 3, and 4, which topic they're going to go over?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll talk about those now, and you will be reminded when you get in there as well. So breakout room 1 is going to be talking about increased fisher income. I will point these out, Oswald, but I'll also remind you that nobody will know that they're in one specifically, right? Till they get there. Breakout room 2 will be on employment. How do we increase employment opportunities? And it sounds a little bit like we're not just talking about increasing employment opportunities, because I think there could be, do we buy more boats and hire more people, or is there something in some of our processes that create a new opportunity we didn't see? Or it also sounds like there's interest, of those upcoming generations. So if the fishers are kind of aging out soon or over the next 10, 15 years, how do we get the younger people to be interested in doing this as a career? Sounds like that's a piece of it too. And then breakout rooms 3 and 4 are both going to talk about value add, right? Because we're dealing with those 3 pillars. John, it looked like you had something there. Am I reading your body language right? Okay.
I can talk ad nauseum, as Chris and Oswald will point out. So I think I'm being muzzled.
Okay, excellent self-restraint. Thank you.
John has been a wonderful resource for us over the last number of months. So he's just full of knowledge and experience. So talk away, John.
Well, if it's anything important to set up the breakout room.
No, I think I tried to be sensitive in terms of what the presentation was, that I actually rewrote it so it was helping to focus people to say, this is the process we did, and these are the things we should be thinking about. But I don't want to prejudice anybody else's thoughts in terms of what needs to be done. And
awesome.
And I'm going to be participating and trying to help out in wherever room I end up in.
Okay, fair. Thank you. So that's the way it's going to break out. So we're going to do 20 minutes. Again, that's for those immediate top of mind things. Then we're going to come back and we want to just share out a little bit. So what kinds of ideas were being discussed in those rooms. And then we're going to go back and we want to kind of dig a little bit deeper into some of those ideas that were expressed. So if there was kind of a standout one or 2 or 3 that seemed really good, the CEDF staff is going to help then just to kind of dig deeper. Tell me more about that. We've got a couple of questions that we're going to ask to try to get more info. And maybe what's next? Like what's step 1? What could put the ideas into action? Just quick suggestions. That'll be the second one. So we'll come back in between now and then. So right now, we'll get into our breakout rooms and have that first discussion on top of mind. And CEDF staff will remind you what you're talking about as soon as you arrive. We'll see you shortly.
It was really about how to support that idea of making commercial fishing a career option, right? And how, some of our programming might be able to actually support some of those early conversations with kids, because we start working with them in about grade 5 through to high school. And so, we might be able to do the value add on the youth side of things, not necessarily, what we're talking about here. So interested in conversations about how we can support that kind of conversation and opportunity for kids in communities.
Right. No, that's great to know where you're coming from. We've had these brainstorming sessions before, and one of the items was, okay, what if we took some of the local catch and brought it to like a high school food program or a college food program? What products could they come up with? Because it does employment in the industry. If we can expand it to those other jobs that could process, that's a win for everybody in the industry as well. So.
Also, you'll notice a prompt come through once in a while. It's not directed at you. It's just directed to the entire event. So carry on your conversation.
Oh, that's good. Good to have that.
Everybody's getting the same one at the same time.
Yeah.
Did you hear me?
Grant? Yeah.
Good. The other day, my sound wasn't working here, so I was having difficulty, but we struggle a little bit with our bandwidth. I was just...
Now, the way it usually works in Northern Manitoba is the fishers, they'll catch the fish, and most of it all just goes wholesale to freshwater. They'll gut it, put it on the train, on the truck, whatever, and in Winnipeg, they'll process it, fillet it, and do whatever's requested by their buyers, and then they'll market and sell the fish. So even value-added processing, if we could keep the filleting and the packaging in Northern Manitoba, that's another way of adding value.
Hi, this is Shauna. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I was just curious, has there ever been any type of study done or market evaluation to find out, for example, if there was going to be a processing location in the north, where it would be and how much it would cost? Because in an ideal world, that would be one of the best fixes, right? If the fishers can fish, process it, and then sell it to a buyer.
I think Suresh can talk on that because he's actually been looking into that.
Yeah, there has been some research into it, and but most of it's coming out of the communities themselves. And the thing is, it's hard to find one spot to put it that will be as ease to all the fishers, and it's hard to get them all on board to. So you tell some guys that you want to build a processing plant and you need them on board, but that processing plant is going to be 300 kilometers away from the community, but it's the best for everybody, but not the best for them.
Right. It almost sounds like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Historically, there was a plant in the Paw at one point. I'm not sure what happened, but in the past, they did do some of those steps here.
Well, I think that would be a bit of a problem, not a problem, but a solution would be to have maybe even a small processing plant in 3 or 4 of the local larger communities. Like what Bowden can bring to Thompson, Rocky Lake, or I'm just shooting at lake names here, can take it to the Paw, but to have it all coming to a central location and picking a community, you know, Split Lake really can't ship their stuff to the Paw as it becomes quite a distance. At that point, once it does get processed, it's a matter of finding a way to market it. So if anyone's got any ideas on that, you know, again, going back to the eco certification, go ahead, Suresh.
And kind of logistically too, because if you have a bunch of fishers that bring the fish to, say, the Paw, if it was centralized in the Paw, it gets processed. Throughout that whole time, you would have to track that fish, unless that processing plant is also in charge of selling it, if they're buying it directly from the fisher. When we look at value-added processing too, we're expecting that most of the catch is going to go to freshwater, and say they sell 5 tubs for $3 a pound to freshwater. If they took 1 or 2 of those tubs of fish and they could add value to it, say you take the fish, you smoke it, you can go from selling that from $3 a pound to $10 a pound. And that's the fisher, all the fisher himself. He's not selling his fish to another company to do that. It's value-added processes that fishers and communities, even co-ops, fishing co-ops can do.
I was just going to say another comment about a value-added opportunity. I know a few people in Manitoba that make product, and they've had discussions about wanting some of the byproduct of fish, specifically things like low-grade fish for making a product or fish oil. And they've, you know, in terms of doing product development in Portage la Prairie, there is some interest out there to look at other parts of the harvest and get some value out of that.
So in conversations with the fishers, when talking to the fishers about byproducts, especially using for fertilizers and stuff, what they say is if they keep, because they're usually fishing in remote cabins, they come back when the boat's full. If they don't gut the fish and they keep the byproducts, it adds more weight. And it only really works out for them if the byproducts, they can sell it per pound more than the pickerel. They'd rather gut the fish, keep pounds of pickerel rather than pounds of byproducts. But that is a good idea. And it could be really useful for fishers who are not so remote. There are several communities, like the Island Lakes, even Norway House and Oxford House. They just directly go out from the communities. They have a lake right there.
I know some of the indigenous locations, like I believe Norway House has a greenhouse system there. You know, maybe they might be interested in some of the byproducts. So that's a good idea actually for fertilizer. If we can find local areas to use those byproducts, then yeah, that would definitely help.
Yeah, say like the LED farm. If
we were looking at too was maybe having a center and a hub where fishers could take a portion of their catch, because through their contract with freshwater, they're allowed to privately sell 10 to 15% of their pickerel catch plus other species. So we were looking at, you know, what if there was a central processing facility? Fishers could come in, rent for 2 days, process part of their catch, you know, whether it's additional smoking, whether it's grinding, whether it's, you know, just vacuum sealing and deboning. We were looking at that. Any thoughts on that, or?
Well, there was I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Berkshire partnership that we, well, I wouldn't want to call it a partnership, but they did a process where they took a group of individuals that wanted to go through the process of harvesting, processing, and then marketing, and that was just done right before COVID hit in the middle of the winter, and it was quite successful. We had some students that were part of that initiative from the Engaged Livers program at Egg Lake, and they loved it. Like, I mean, we should be doing that, and I've talked with Mr. Berkshire as well about continuing to do that, and he's certainly a willing partner in that event. And it was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was looking at fish that were not walleye. They wanted to do burbot. They wanted to the other burbot and pike, I think, were the idea, just to get them to open up. It's kind of like the lobster story from out east. Lobster was the poor man's meal back in the day, right? And then now it's a delicacy. I mean, it's just looking at it through a different eye. And with Berkshire's network, you could market, and he has the processing ability to package and transport. So, I mean, those are things that kind of got in the way. But it was a great. I thought it was a tremendous opportunity. We had kids that also took part in the meat cutting processing too. That he's now expanded into, just because of what COVID did to the beef producers in northern Alberta. He now has one that's supplying him over here in the pod, or was working on that. So, right. I mean, there's tremendous opportunity in the north. It may not be as massive as some of these other operators, but I think we start small and work within our region.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned Berkshire. Yeah, that's actually Dale from the video, Dale Jonason, for our March fish market that was cut short. Dale had actually gone out, caught 1,000 pounds. He was at Berkshire's and he was midway processing through it, and we had to pull the plug on it. So we were within days. So yeah, Dale was actually at Berkshire's in March processing, and we had that partnership, and it worked well. It gave them a spot that they don't have. It's federally inspected facility. You know, that's not easy for a fisher to come into. So no,
and I think, you know, if we don't support Jim in this venture, or this, you know, in this way, if we don't help him in every way we can, you know, it's not a bottomless pit of cash that he's got, you know.
No.
I just feel that it's put up a big sign and say it's Manitoba fish, and people will buy it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my own opinion. But
No, I share that too. I think there's definitely some room to develop in the products too. You know, it's hard enough getting boneless local fillets, but I haven't seen any fish burgers or any other, you know, it's tough to find smoked whitefish even. You know, down south, a little bit more around the Gimli area, there's a ton of smoked fish producers, but up north it's less less common. So room in all sorts of products.
Bottom line is you've got to make it, available so that the local people can support their own. It needs to get there though.
Just a question, of the fish caught in northern Manitoba, where does it go? Like, is it staying local? Is it going to other provinces, international, south?
Right. The majority, there's no other active private buyers in the north other than freshwater fish. So freshwater fish has agencies in Woboden, in the Paw, in Leaf Rapids, South Indian Lake, and Grand Rapids. So all that fish goes down to Transcona, is processed there. And then from there, the majority of it, if not all of it, is just exported, with a small amount going to Winnipeg retail stores. So the majority is exported outside of the province. And even just the processing at freshwater, it's just primary processing that's sent out for secondary producers like Highliner and that. So, it's tough to say how much has gone local here, but estimates is probably 5 to 10%, if that. That's a high estimate too. So. Yeah, so there's a few constraints. The fisher holding the fish for the season to give it to a consumer, logistics of doing all the deliveries, the refrigeration. There's a few things hanging them up. So.
Is there any opportunity with any kind of byproducts that right now aren't used for anything, but could be sold as a value add? Like in the video, for example, you see him cutting off the heads of the walleye or pickerel. Is anything right now done with that? Or is there something that you could come up with where there's a use for something like that? It's normally thrown out, but all of a sudden there's a new value.
Absolutely. There's definitely room to grow. And in Winnipeg, they use pretty much every portion of it. The guys in Woboden with those heads, after they go into the bucket and then they'll take the cheeks out. So they do further processing and just sell the big bags of that. But yeah, in freshwater, finding those byproducts are game changers. Like for suckers, they were getting like 25 cents a fish before. Then they were selling the heads, and they found a lobster fisherman who would just buy the heads. They sell the scales to these makeup manufacturers. They sell tails to pet food manufacturers. So they have a ton of byproducts.
Oh, okay.
But if you need such a large volume for those byproducts, it's difficult for an individual fisher to go into that.
Okay.
But one thing we were looking at is like just a bio kind of fuel, because those guts, those all go into the lake. So sometimes those can be used as fertilizer as well.
Okay.
15 seconds. But yeah, good point.
All right, so we'll see you in the main room.
Awesome. It looks like everybody is arriving back safe and sound from the breakout rooms. I had the opportunity to go into 2 of them. So great conversation going on. I'm hearing some really cool ideas. Kind of building off of the market, I guess, local market test that CEDF did. I don't know if you consider that a test or not, but of course we saw the pictures of it there in the large trucks. So kind of building off of that came, how do you get that to more people, and how does it become COVID friendly? And that went to a discussion of it being kind of like a skip the dishes kind of model, where you get the product direct to whoever has placed the order, which then launched into a HelloFresh concept. And I can't remember, was that Jeff who was talking about the HelloFresh? And can I put you on the spot to kind of flesh that out, just to share the idea with the rest? Oh, I think you're still muted.
We were talking about, now I'm unmuted.
You're good.
Yeah, you're good.
Talking about skip the dishes, and I was thinking back to our conversation yesterday, for those that were around, of turning a lower price product into a more premium product. So something like HelloFresh, where the product is packaged as a meal to be shipped out, turns it into a premium product, which should be able to attract a higher price And then I guess in my mind, there was a marketing component. I've seen internet videos promoting food. I know Manitoba Pork and Manitoba Chicken are doing them. There would be, in my opinion, nothing stopping a marketing group for fish from partnering up with Manitoba chefs to say, hey, here's a quick and easy pickerel preparation you can do, and here's a link to order the kit. There, how'd I do?
You did great.
Can I just add one thing to that? Because some people in our group said they weren't really fishermen. When you leave the skin on something and you go to prepare it, it's slimy. It turns you off so much. Like, that's the thing. I wouldn't buy I do it with salmon just because my husband likes it, but it's really slimy. So that would have a negative, I think, effect, because people are used to that filleted package. I don't know.
So I guess if I may just continue, when I'm envisioning this, and another part of our conversation was vertical integration. I understand a lot of the processing is done in Winnipeg, so fish from the north is sent south for processing, and then goes out from there. Maybe it's an occupational hazard as a guy who finances capital, but I don't see any reason why there can't be processing up here. It would give the producers more control. They would catch the margin of the value add of the, you take the fish out of the water, and then it lets them catch that middle ground of processing the fish. It creates jobs in the north. And then that would allow you to prepare a customized product according to your need. So that, just carrying the HelloFresh idea forward, you would have a product that somebody can just open up the vacuum pack, bread it, throw it in the pan, and there it is. There's no skin to take out. It's deboned. You don't actually have to touch the meat. That's, I guess, what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Great work. I love how the two of you are working together. So we talked about, kind of building on each other's ideas. It's exactly what's happening there. And I think it's a cool concept. And then it, as Jeff was just saying, it kind of bleeds into the other discussion on employment opportunities, right? So that was on increasing fisher income, but then that idea actually has inherent benefits over into creating employment opportunities on the processing side, maybe on the distribution side. So it creates all kinds of different avenues for solutions there. So maybe on that, could somebody share from the employment opportunities group something that came up?
Is that the job?
Try. Yeah, we'll let John. I was in a stacked room. I think I was learning more than I was writing, so I'm sorry. It was a wonderful conversation.
Pam brought up this thing about really trying to promote the career of commercial fishing at an earlier age. So I know, Pam, did you want to talk a little bit about that? Or not?
I'm trying to unmute myself here. Yeah, I'd said that really I haven't seen a lot of it in the schools with my kids or even with my adults in the centers. I thought that maybe if it was introduced more with the different things we do with careers and career exploration, so that students actually know that it's a viable career in Manitoba. Because you see so many people, our youth, they're going to different provinces to work, they're going to different careers. So they need to see that this is out there and that they could make a living at it and basically be their own boss too, because you see a lot of them, they really don't want to follow direction, or they don't want to. So if they could get into something like that, they'd also be, reliant on themselves and what they do. That would help too, because I know I have a husband and he don't like working for other people anymore. And I also heard that thing about, being able to fix your own engines and being able to do some of your own maintenance and repair. And I think that's another big thing to help with the, and I mean, we do offer courses like that. We offer hairdressing, we offer carpentry, why aren't we doing something that's teaching the fishing more so, and the filleting, the cleaning, I sit at 50 years old and I still can't properly fillet a fish, and yet I love fish. I love eating fish, but I won't buy it if it's not done proper.
Yeah.
And just as a background, so why Pam got into talking about that is that we had mentioned how the fishing industry is an aging industry, and it's not just in Manitoba, it's across the country. And how do we get more young people into the industry? And there's a few angles to it. Anston had asked, what are some of the major barriers? And we talked about the perceived return on investment and so on, but also that's where Pam started talking about, perhaps introducing it like they do at an early age about being a welder or a nurse or whatever. They just don't do it about on the commercial fishing. And by the way, just to know those stats, when you look at the area where we're losing the most licensed fishers in the province, it's the north. The north is where we are losing at the fastest rate.
Well, because if you look, it's a challenging industry to get into. And if you're going to get into it, you've got to have a love for it. So you got to start fostering that love in the young people. If they develop a love for a career or something they're going to want to do, they're going to be saying, that's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to get into doing fishing. I want to go into tourism. I want to go into, it's the same reason a lot of people become teachers, carpenters, nurses, is because they've heard about it when they were young.
Yeah. And there's lots of other benefits too, like Oswald said in the breakout room. Where else can you get X amount of dollars as a side gig in a couple weeks? But in the video at the beginning, I remember the fisher they were mentioning, like, nobody bothers me, and he kind of likes harvest time because he's not getting any texts and things like that. So there's other benefits to sell as well as other angles. I want to keep us moving because we do have one more breakout room. We'll do from 11:30 to 11:50. So in the 2 minutes we have left, sorry for the narrow time there, if somebody from the value add group, there were 2 value add groups, so anyone from either of those can just share an idea that came up there.
Yeah, I can share one here that came up in ours. It was mentioned, we're talking about talking about the byproducts of fish and different ways we can use it. We're talking about fertilizers, oils, and the word circular economy came up, and that really kind of pulled on my strings, kind of creating a circular economy in the communities where the fishers reside in. So their byproducts can be used, other products can be used, but not by the fishers, by other industries and jobs created through the byproducts.
Interesting. We have time for a little bit more if you don't mind expanding.
Things that were mentioned were like the fishers would come back, their catch would go to freshwater, the byproducts could be used, and the undesirable fish for stuff fertilizer, dog food. In OCN, I think it was mentioned that they have been started selling their lettuce and stuff from their LED farms in their local shops. Well, why not get local fertilizer for the farm?
Yeah.
And then to process that fertilizer, I'm sure job creation will come into there. You'll have somebody who takes the byproducts, process it, creates the fertilizer. And then you're just creating that circular economy where everything's staying in the region, in the community, but it's being used as well. You're not wasting anything.
Yeah.
I'm just going to add for that on all the waste disposal sites, because that's kind of my background. There's always an area that's called the offal area. So basically it's meant for piles of fish. That's where you bring all your guts and your skeletons and everything. So you marry that with collecting it to feed the fertilizers.
Awesome. Great. More great builds. Thanks, Raj, for digging in a little bit further and talking specifically about some of those products. That just kind of helps me. And it gets more towards actionable idea too, right? If we talk about circular economy, I like you, I'm like, ooh, I'm curious, tell me more. If we want to get towards actionable idea, that's where we start saying this product, right? So that's where we could dig into, like, we need ideas for who is going to do this, or how it's going to work, or what the product might be, what the market might be. Like, so there's a real kind of tangible go forward in that. I love that.
What was mentioned was strategic plans for each product, basically, in the communities.
And also an overall strategic plan, because the whole circular economy and eco-certification is where the high value markets are going, the European and the Japanese. And so if there's an overall strategic plan around what is needed for circular economy and eco-certification, then the smaller decisions can be made within that context, because you have to move towards it rather than pivot to it, I think would be easier. And somebody talked about looking at not today's markets, but future markets, and the value added and the high value products are going to be ones that are considered sustainable. So in looking at eco-certification, one has to be very careful that it's seen in those markets as credible. And there's a lot of eco-certification that's seen as greenwashing. So there has to be an alignment with where you want to go and where you want to market.
Thanks, Diane. Important info there. We're going to go into our next breakout room. Now, what I want you to do here is we want to deal with the same ideas, okay? And the reason we want to do this is because there may be things about those ideas we're not seeing. In fact, maybe your conversation hasn't quite got to an idea yet, and it's a theme. Now, the things that we heard, those are ideas. So we want to dig into those, and I'm just talking about the three that we heard shared here. Those are ideas. But how about a little bit more about how it works? What we're going to do is David and I are going to put a couple of questions or prompts, we will call them, just sentences that you can read that might help you think about your concept a little bit differently. You know, what if you broke it down into parts? Or what if you reversed the way you did this? Just generic prompts just to get you, there's no right or wrong answer, right? And it's not you just answer that question directly. It's, you know what, that makes me think of this. And I think as a group, we're kind of already doing that. We're hearing that. We're, oh, that thing makes me think of this. That's great. You know, we're deferring judgment. We're looking for lots of ideas. We're not worried about how feasible right now, because big and interesting is easy to make feasible. Small and boring is impossible to make big and breakthrough. So we'll deal with those big level ideas. We'll use the prompts in the next 18 minutes about to dig a little deeper. And then right at the tail end, and maybe you've been seeing those little green prompts coming up from David along the way where he's saying, think about opportunities, and also tells you how many minutes are left. He's going to throw in there about halfway through the time, just a reminder to think, what action could we take? Or what action would need to be taken to move this forward to the next step? So that'll be the second part. So first we're going to dig deeper into one of those ideas by thinking of it differently through the prompts, just conversationally. And then secondly, it's what's one step we could take towards making this happen. 18 minutes, we'll break out, and then we'll come back to wrap up the day.
The private partnerships that education had with Berkshires, and I explained we had that partnership as well, but there were students that had gone through with the processing. So any thoughts from anybody out there?
So if you do things like, and Chris, go back to like last January where we were talking with others in terms of how to develop the marketplace for this. That's one important component in terms of adding value or price ultimately. Like I'm looking quite selfishly saying, how do you increase the price that's received to a fisher as a result of that? The other thing too is, I think people have talked about the supply of fishers to that mix, male or female, right? Like it's, how do you provide an environment where it's interesting, or at least considered as part of that mix? And using fish in the culinary process is one thing, but CDF also looked at like the winter fisher helper assistance, right? How can you actually pay an individual who does winter fishing to bring along somebody else who might be interested in winter fishing to help them out for a couple of weeks so they can get some exposure and to what it is. I think those types of opportunities are low cost and add a lot of value or potential value to saying this is the mechanics of what it takes to actually do this. Now, it has to be done for youth. It has to be done in a safe environment. It has to be, compartmentalized so that it's attractive. But these types of things help to say, look, there's this opportunity as well. And this is something else that we could look at. But in terms of, Ryan talked about value added in the process. So you don't necessarily have to haul in the net to be part of the process. You could be somebody who does the initial processing, icing, provides ice to the mix, transports it, deals with the relationship between harvester and marketer or harvester and retailer. There are a lot of different nodes that people can participate in and who could get exposure to it. And being aware of them is half the battle. When you say I'm in the fishing industry, what does that generally mean? To me, it generally means I'm a guy that goes out in a boat. It's not I'm a young woman who goes out in a boat, or I'm a young individual who deals with the marketing part of this or finds interesting ways to make use of the byproducts of this. There are a lot of elements that I like. That's my bias. I'll be blunt about it. I think of it as the guys that we saw in the video, generally out doing what they do in nice weather, not in icy weather, not in foggy, rainy, windy weather. No accidents happened. Everything looked pretty vanilla, which was good. But that's my perception. And that's probably not a healthy perception to have. So I think exposure, immediate exposure, like you guys were doing with the winter fishes is really helpful. I think that helps to move things along.
Yeah, and the skill set in that Fisher Helper program we've done so far is more of a direct apprenticeship, like you said, the actual
industry. So if you do portable plant, I like the sound of that a lot better, because there's going to be a couple months where the plant is empty and there's no fish going through it. So if you could move it elsewhere and store it, it'd be a lot more viable.
Well, with 300 fishers and 300 lakes, could be moved around.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's not even looking at the other lakes or other opportunities, right? We haven't really talked about that, but there are other locations that there's potential for fishing, right? And so I do wonder about that logistics of having these portables. I think that does make sense, but another thing I wondered about, if there's product demand, where does the industry come in? Like there's, is there any interest from a company that's producing product to, like we talk about the scenario where a buyer backed out and the plant closes, but is there no opportunity for, somebody that's producing fish product to make an investment or do some sort of a partnership that way?
No, but it's a good idea. Maybe Freshwater would be interested in having a more northern plant to slow or speed up the processing process.
Yeah, and when you say that, Ken, they're an obvious choice. But what about companies that develop fish products, like working with private industry?
Do you have an example of some of those products?
Well, I gave an example of startups where there's people that want to create a product, but that I'm not focusing on that. I'm focusing on there's a global increasing demand for fish products, right?
Right.
And what I'm saying is, and this is in the immediate, but in the long term, is there not somebody that and it shouldn't be the fishers. It should be people like us that are trying to develop an interest from somebody that sees that, you talked about 300 lakes. I don't know where that might go in the future, but somebody that would make an infrastructure investment to be able to get a product to market.
I like your idea and everything. Keeping in mind though that they can only fish the lakes with quotas that allow them to take. They can't just pick a lake and fish, because it'll end up being fished out, of course. So that's why they're using particular lakes.
And the other thing to just recognize is that for our value added, especially for the fishers, Northern Manitoba fishers, we're looking at ways so we could keep it in the province. So freshwater, 95% of their product, it's all exported. They take care of the fish globally for pickerel demand around the world. Even the byproducts, they ship out their byproducts for stuff. So we're looking at, as you said, if we could find somebody to partner with, but if we could find somebody locally in Manitoba to partner with, industry.
Yeah, but he's also mentioning not just fisheries for, maybe somebody who could use the byproduct or the oils or something.
So like a farm or something.
Chemical companies, drug companies. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't want to sidetrack the conversation, but I've had a couple conversations with people that would use byproduct. And they are Manitoba.
I'd be interested in getting a copy of that if you want to send it to us.
Yeah, if you like to be in touch.
If it's available.
Sure, we could have a conversation about that.
Well, you can easily find myself or Sir Ridge's number when you have an opportunity to give us a call.
Yeah. Any other things to touch upon? I'll look at the prompts here that David's thrown into our room. Is there anything in your idea, problem, opportunity that could be shortened, omitted, or broken up? Are there alternate materials, locations, processes, approaches? So I guess we kind of touched on that with the processing facility, like a mobile one, standalone.
I just have a question. I was just like when you have your discussions with fishers, right? I'm just trying to get an idea with the mobile processing, right?
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know if there's a percentage that you can provide kind of, but like overall, I'm assuming like not every fisher wants to fish, process, and also be, so they don't want to be the catch the fish, be the fish buyer, the fish seller, the fish processor, everyone, right? Some people just want to catch and sell it. Right. It's a hard industry, right? It's exhausting. It's long days. It's seasonal. It's stressful. So I was just curious, like, to try to get an idea in my mind, of who these fishers are that are interested in going further with, say, the processing, so that they can do the value added. Is it kind of like, do you have a percentage? Is it from certain areas of the province or certain lakes or anything like that you've seen an interest?
Yeah, I'd give a rough estimation about 20 to 30% of each community. So whenever I've gone into a community, I'll talk to, say it's a group of 10, there'll be about 3 guys, there'll be about 5 who have interest, and then 2 of them will drop off. And there'll always be somebody who sees that product can be used in their community. A lot of the value-added processes that people talk to me about is, can I smoke this to sell in my community? Can I package this to sell to my community? It's not necessarily selling across province. But there has been a lot of interest in smoking fish and packaging and processing of pickerel cheeks. Because again, a lot of fishers don't want to spend that time filleting all the fish, but they see that even if they sell these fish to freshwater, all this other stuff is just going to waste.
Yeah, and as well, in that third that does want to see it, a lot of them, it's because they want to see better money for their product, and they figure if they process themselves that they can get better money for their product. So I can, the OCN, Split Lake, there's interest in having processing plants there. But when it comes down to all of a sudden, now we have to market this product, what we need is maybe a way to educate them on how to market the product, because they have to do it themselves if they're going to process it themselves, or find somebody who will say, take 2 areas and market their product, and another person over here will take their area and market that product.
I got a question. Has anybody talked to the agents in the north to see if they are able to process fish for the fishers? Because I mean, we do have some agents in the north. There's one in Bowden, there's one in Grand Rapids, there's one.
Understanding of what opportunities and what people are talking about in the north, because we can frame and structure our programming and our career exploration to make it relevant, right? So you know, I think it really, that awareness piece and giving kids the chance to see, experience, and explore in a very real way. I mean, COVID obviously makes it different for us right now in terms of that actual experiential component, but there's lots of things that we can do virtually to engage kids in learning process. And I really think, you know, the commercial fishing aspect could be something that we can build, because, you know, I think about some of the other things that are behind the scenes, whether it's, you know, small engine repair. We have a, you know, a mechanics lesson plan already that we can build on, right? So we'll talk about being a commercial fisher, a small engine repair mechanic, refrigeration technology, right? So you can really build a fulsome exploration program around commercial fishing.
And if you encourage people to be aware of the opportunity, and then Chris, like following up with that and saying, of the 5 different components of what it takes to operate a commercial fishery, these are the types of things that, you know, people could, and then have the follow-up. So there's a continuum. One thing, I'm a resource economist. We deal with how projects affect people and the employment opportunities that come out of it. We've done that for a couple of decades now. But one of the things that's the continuum of that development, to be able to draw and make a connection between, I can go from, I don't know, in the commercial fishing sector, it's like from a very basic, simple position, stacking tubs, I don't know, to actually participating in the delivery of tubs, to value adding the products contained within the tubs. That if someone can draw that map out, and it doesn't have to be, particularly for a grade 5 student, here's the next 25 years of your life, all nicely mapped out for you. That's not going to work. But for people to draw the conclusion, it looks like it is sustainable, that it doesn't look like it's risky, that it doesn't look like that it can be honest and real and looks like it's going to be there tomorrow, are all important factors, and understanding what those factors are is the critical part of it. But yeah, like Rhonda, you could be looking at how to provide that exposure at that level, and then maybe tier 2 exposure in grade 8 or grade 10 or whatever. And then Chris being able to have safe opportunities to introduce people to those types of experiences, and that maybe 1 in 10, maybe 1 in 5, I don't know, say, you know what, this actually, now it's been planted, and it's not just a male only based opportunity as well. One of the things that we've been impressed with is that, no, I think that I'm hoping that it's tough work, but that doesn't mean it's isolated to one particular gender or not. So people can get that exposure and make a career out of it. It doesn't, like, that's the other thing I've been fascinated with as we've looked at it across Canada.
Rhonda, what format do you think is the most useful for those exploration programs? Like what do you find gets the best engagement? Is it people in person?
Well, yeah, certainly. Like in the pre-COVID environment, we did all of our programming in person, very hands-on, very realistic, you know, scenarios for the kids to engage in, whether, you know, we needed, you know, to use a lab at UCN, for example, right? They would give us permission to actually take kids, you know, into the nursing lab or to natural resources to use the equipment that would actually be part of that job, right? So it was very much in person, hands-on. We certainly have to pivot, right, and switch our programming to online right now because of COVID and our inability to get onto campuses. And then obviously with the, you know, reduced, you know, number sizes and programming sizes, certainly has an effect on how we can deliver, but we are making that.
Okay, everybody's back. Thanks so much for your participation in those groups. I think it was awesome. The stuff that I was hearing, I do want to say I fell in love with a couple of ideas, and that's a problem. And I wanted to point that out because it's something that we often say at Envision Edge. It's a part of the innovation system that we train within and clients we work with. We always say fall in love with the problem, not with the idea. Now, there were some very exciting things, and the ideas kept morphing. Like I hung out at with that idea we heard before about the HelloFresh kind of concept and getting the catch, kind of fresh to door, and then now an app that supports the distribution side of that mechanism, and all the other jobs that creates, and how you can pay or charge a premium product. And there was just, that's where I started falling in love with the idea. So I wanted to bring that up just as a heads up, as maybe there's initiatives that carry forward from these ideas. Keep in mind the problem you're solving, because the problem you're solving will always be the relevant piece of information. How you solve it will shift, and you need to be open to it shifting, because if you were to test out things like the HelloFresh one is complex because it's got a lot of moving pieces, but if you said it has to be this, and that all 6 core aspects of making that idea are non-negotiable, then you get yourself into trouble. So you would test out parts. Does that work? What are we learning? Does it need to shift? Again, we stay open and flexible. My wife always says, hold things with open hands, so it's easier to let go if you have to. So why did I say that? Now I got myself off track. But the point is, you have to shift with what you're learning and keep your eyes on the problem that you're solving. With that, and before any more rants, I'll hand it back over to Oswald to wrap the day.
Thanks, Ryan, and thank you everyone for those discussions. It's when we've been talking about commercial fishing, as long as we have over over the years, you tend to get into your own kind of box in regards to how you view everything. And it's always good when you have people comment on the industry and you start to really realize that there's other ways to look at the same problem. And I think by keeping an open mind, that's how you yourself learn a lot. And so I thank everyone for that. Tomorrow is our last day of our forum. It's on forestry. It's titled Expanding Community-Based Opportunities in Forestry. And for those who are interested in registering for that hasn't yet, you can just email Leanne at lbrong@cdf.mb.ca. Even though she's away from the office today, she will be monitoring her emails first thing tomorrow morning. So for sure, if you want to be involved in that, just email her. I want again, once again, sorry, thank John and Christina from InterGroup for their presentation. That strategic plan will also be posted on our website later on. I encourage anyone who's interested in talking more about the commercial fishing industry to contact myself or Chris Sevno. Chris is our CFO and manager of our developmental loans that includes commercial fishing. Also, Suraj Sehi, who's also on this forum right now. He's our main contact for that industry as well. If you have any thoughts or anything you want to discuss. In saying that, that would be it for us for today. And I will see everyone tomorrow morning. Thanks again for joining us, and look forward to our final day and final discussions on forestry. Everyone, enjoy your day. Thank you.